Good afternoon. If everyone would just please take a seat. Hello and welcome, everyone. I'm excited to We're excited to see everyone. I hope that everyone enjoyed the panels on the virtual day yesterday. A lot of great topics. I know I learned a lot, so I hope that you all had an opportunity to take notes and learn from some other experts in our industry. We'll just run through today's agenda. So this is our welcome and updates, followed by our keynote address from Angela Navarro, former FCC commissioner. We will then have a networking break, followed by our plenary session, which is going to be on multifamily financing, followed by our energy efficiency leadership awards. I hope everyone sticks around for those. And then we will be having a networking reception out in the hallway. So it's a great agenda and looking forward to connecting with all of you during the breaks and at the reception. You do have a thing, the tent card on your tables. That is where you can access the digital program. It's also a QR code on the back of your name tags and up here. So many opportunities to scan that code. We could not put this event on without our sponsors. So we thank all of them, including Dominion Energy, Community Housing Partners, Michaels Energy, Columbia Gas of Virginia, Washington Gas, Project Homes, Appalachian Power, TRC, Franklin Energy, ICF, Rappahannock Electric Cooperative, Optimum Performance Solutions, and Siemens. We couldn't do it without their help. Now, as we mentioned yesterday, we are part of the one-stop shop with Virginia Energy. Our role in this, this is leading up to the IRA rebates. We are doing the stakeholder engagement piece. And so if you were with us yesterday online, you know that we did a couple of polling questions and we'd like to do them today as well. So if everyone can get out your phones and you can either join you can try to see if your camera will scan the QR code from where you are, or you can just type in the web address that you see at the bottom. I'll give everyone a second. Hey, Jess, can you ask Rebecca to come in, please? Is the ZEO to SEO, is that separate? Is that like a code? Okay. So apparently it's ALJPBZEO to SEO. Is that working for folks? All right, I got one thumbs up. I got two more thumbs up. All right. Love it when a poll works. Okay, now that folks are in, does anyone need another minute? Okay. Nope. So there are some questions that you'll go through. It looks like we are not going to be sharing those on the screen. Sure, but yeah, they're not going to see their responses on the screen. Rebecca is tracking them on her screen in the back. So we want to make sure we are capturing all of your responses. I think there's a total of 5 questions. And again, this is really going to help us and help Virginia Energy as they design the home energy rebate program. So these questions are focused on contractors. We are also going to have a set of questions for local government members that will be sent out in an email. And we are also going to be doing some consumer advocacy outreach as well in partnership with some of our friends in the environmental community. So we are trying to poll a variety of different stakeholders really to help with the design of the upcoming program. So your input is critically important. Has everyone had a chance? Does anyone need an extra minute? Two minutes? Oh, okay. So it looks like So we're doing one question at a time. Okay. Are they all live at one time, or is it you're just doing it? Okay, so there are multiple questions. Apologies, folks. Technology is always wonderful. So there's one question. We're now moving to a second question. And Rebecca will let us know when we're moving to a third question. All right, we're moving to question number 3. You should see that on the screen on your phone. We really appreciate your patience and participation with us. Ready to move on to the next question? All right, next question. Okay, we're done. Thank you. Appreciate everyone for doing that. All right, next, it's my honor to introduce our keynote speaker, Angela Navarro. Angela is a longtime friend of mine, so I'm very excited that you're here today. Angela first started off as an attorney with Southern Environmental Law Center. She was she worked for the Northam, actually McAuliffe and Northam administrations, and then was briefly an SEC commissioner at the Virginia, which is the regulating agency for utilities in Virginia, in case you don't know that. And now she is out on her own with ALN Policy and Law. And so we're so excited to have her today. Please join me in welcoming Angela Navarro. Well, thank you, Chelsea, for that introduction. It's great to be with you guys this afternoon. Thanks to Jessica and the whole Virginia Energy Efficiency Council team for putting this great event together. I've attended a lot of Virginia Energy Efficiency Council meetings over the years. I've known Chelsea for a very long time. And this is my first time serving as your keynote speaker. So it's an honor for me to be here in this capacity. Typically, I'm sitting in the audience listening to all of the intelligence and thoughts that come from leaders in this space. So it's great to be here and to share a little bit of my perspective. I know there's a lot going on in the energy efficiency space. Chelsea asked me to sort of talk about the history, my role in that history, the role of the council. So what I'm going to try to do over the next 15 minutes is not lull you to sleep, but really tell an interesting narrative around how energy efficiency policy has transformed over the last 15 years, because it has really been a roller coaster. And you guys in this room have been at the front of that roller coaster, experiencing all the highs and the lows to get to where we are today, where I think we have a tremendous amount of momentum. So it's no secret that energy efficiency policy in Virginia has a long and somewhat frustrating history. I think we can all agree to that. Sometimes it feels like we're moving one step forward, 2 steps back. And for many, many years, we were collectively in this room working really, really hard to get the policy and regulatory frameworks in Virginia in the right place to allow the implementation, which is what many of you do, to actually grow and thrive and be a robust element of our energy portfolio. Sometimes I'm sure you still feel a little bit frustrated, but I also hope that you feel optimistic, because there's so much momentum in this space right now. And that's really where I hope to focus this presentation today.
I don't want to focus on the negative. I want to focus on the positive, on the future, and on what you guys have built to get to where we are. So let's start with the number 34. In 2010, which is sort of what I would say the first year where we started to see significant focus on energy efficiency in Virginia. In 2010, Virginia ranked 34th out of 50 states on the ACEEE state scorecard. And Chelsea mentioned I was at the Southern Environmental Law Center back then. We use the scorecard to sort of measure a state's progress, right? How well are you doing on implementing programs, on having the right policy and regulatory framework in place? So 34, not great, right? Squarely within the bottom half of states nationally. That's not where Virginia wanted to be. And we had a lot of work to do to get to a leading state on energy efficiency policy and regulation. So in 2010, we were just about 3 years into implementation of our first statewide policy on energy efficiency. That statewide policy was actually written as part of the governor's energy plan in 2007. So some may say the governor's energy plan is meaningless, but actually our first energy efficiency policy was included in that plan in 2007. The goal was to reduce energy usage by 10% by 2022, using 2006 as the baseline. Say that 10 times fast. That's a big goal, right? And that 10% goal really became our lighthouse for nearly a decade. A lot of the work that folks in this room, that policymakers, legislators, regulators did was trying to move toward achievement of that 10% goal. Implementing that goal was easier said than done, though, right? And it took a very, very long time to see the state start to move toward progress on that 10% goal. While I was at the Southern Environmental Law Center, which is sort of the first 5 years of implementation of that goal, I litigated a number of the energy efficiency dockets of the State Corporation Commission. Chelsea mentioned that the commission is the body that regulates the utilities. So if a utility wants to implement an energy efficiency program and work with contractors and other implementers like those in this room, they have to first seek approval from the commission. At that time, we had some pretty rigid regulatory frameworks in place. It was difficult to get energy efficiency programs approved at the commission. And some of this goes into sort of wonky details around the cost effectiveness test and evaluation, measurement, and verification. But just know that the Energy Efficiency Council was the leading voice in many of those conversations, both at the legislature and at the regulatory agency, trying to reform cost effectiveness, EM&B, and actually trying to codify that 10% goal so that it had some teeth to it. Fast forward 5 years later. By that point, I'd moved to the McAuliffe administration, worked with Chelsea very closely for the first few years where we were really trying to find a way that we could actually chart out a course to achieving that 10% goal. So in 2017, 2018, we put together a new energy plan, governor's energy plan. And that plan was an attempt to build a roadmap on achieving the 10% goal. Up until that point, we were maybe on track to achieving half of that 10% goal. And remember, the goal was supposed to be met by 2022. So we were well on our way to 2022 and not even close to achieving our target on energy efficiency. So we worked with stakeholders like the Virginia Energy Efficiency Council on that energy plan. And we found programs and policies that would get us 75% of the way there, which felt like an accomplishment, but still was like moving a boulder up a hill, right? In terms of the policy framework, we just didn't have all the tools yet to see the significant progress on energy efficiency. Around that same time, the legislature was working on an energy package that then became the Grid Transformation and Security Act. I'm sure many of you know in this room have heard of the GTSA, but what that law did, and again, the Energy Efficiency Council was at the table helping to negotiate that bill, is it put spending targets in place. So it said for the utilities, for the investor-owned utilities, they were required essentially to spend a certain amount of money on energy efficiency programs over a 10-year period between 2018 and 2028. And what those spending targets were aimed at were increasing the level of investment of ratepayer dollars in energy efficiency in Virginia so that we could get more programs in place and more implementation on the ground. The result of that legislation is that Dominion was required to spend and invest $870 million of ratepayer funds, and Appalachian Power was required to expend $140 million of ratepayer funds. in energy efficiency programs over that 10-year period. One other piece that was really important, and that is a legacy of that bill that still lives on today, was the utilization of a stakeholder process to design energy efficiency programs to work with the utilities. And I know that many of you in this room still participate in that stakeholder process now, which is the current process on the next evolution of energy efficiency programs. But really the idea was, okay, utilities are making these massive investments, very significant investments relative to what was previously done. But those investments shouldn't be made in a vacuum, right? You need to work with the industry, with stakeholders like yourselves, the businesses who are actually implementing them, to design programs that they're effective so that they can get the maximum amount of savings that you want to achieve. And just to ensure that the design is done in a way that you actually get programs that folks can implement. So that's 2018. 2 years later, we had a much more foundational shift in energy policy. And it was an interesting time in Richmond because you had a very brief window of alignment between the governor and the legislature, both chambers of the legislature, that we needed a foundational policy on the transition to a clean energy system. And that became the Virginia Clean Economy Act. And I know that many of you in this room know the Virginia Clean Economy Act. You work on programs that are geared toward implementation of the resource standards, energy efficiency resource standards that were in the VCEA. But you might not know all of the history that led up to the VCEA, right? So I think it's important to understand where we came from and how we got to the VCEA. So essentially, again, Chelsea and the Virginia Energy Efficiency Council were in the room. There were a lot of stakeholders that negotiated that package of legislation. But there were two foundational elements of energy efficiency that were woven into that legislation, two really important principles. The first is there's broad bipartisan support for energy efficiency across the Commonwealth. People understand that energy efficiency is the least cost resource. We'd rather spend money on energy efficiency programs than build new power stations. So we wanted significant levels of energy efficiency in the Virginia Clean Economy Act, especially because it's the least cost resource. And there were other more expensive resources that energy efficiency could help to offset. The second is there was a recognition that while prior legislation, including the Grid Transformation and Security Act, really focused on utility spending on energy efficiency, we didn't have a complementary policy on energy savings. And so that's what became the foundational layer for the energy efficiency resource standard. So we all know now that resource standard is in place, and it essentially says that by 2025, Dominion has to implement programs that achieve 5% of 2019 retail sales, and Appalachian Power has to implement programs that achieve 2% of 2019 retail sales. And then beyond 2025, the commission decides what those levels are. And that docket is actually open today. So that actually takes me to the next iteration of energy policy. We've got legislation, multiple pieces of legislation, and now we're at implementation. And what that means is that you have our state agencies, Virginia Energy and the State Corporation Commission, who are implementing the regulatory environment to see that growth in energy efficiency across the Commonwealth. After the Virginia Clean Economy Act passed, I was fortunate to be elected by the legislature to serve as a commissioner on the State Corporation Commission. I did that job for about 14 months, which was amazing. And I was there when we were issuing our first orders on implementation of the VCEA, right? And that included the first petitions for approval for new demand side management programs, including the energy efficiency portfolio standard. It included EM&V dockets. It included renewable portfolio standards and integrated resource plans. I'd like to think that those first orders set the stage for that move and that transition into a more significant direction and positive direction on energy efficiency implementation. And that sort of takes us to the commission now, right? We've got a new commission. We've got 2 new commissioners and a lot of active dockets at the commission on implementation of energy efficiency. The Energy Efficiency Council is a leading voice on implementation at the commission. These are very technical and very wonky dockets. I don't know if any of you have gone onto the commission's website and pulled those filings, but they're incredibly technical and very detail oriented. And so having a seat at the table is incredibly important because Many of you might not necessarily know what happens in Richmond or track and monitor what happens at the State Corporation Commission, but by being a part of the Virginia Energy Efficiency Council, you have a strong voice just through your membership there. So we started with the number 34. Now let's go to the second number, which is 20. Still not number 1 or number 10, but we're moving further up the chain, right? So 20 is Virginia's latest ranking in the ACEEE State Energy Efficiency Scorecard. That actually was from 2022. So I'd like to see a 2024 number. There's certainly a lot more work to do. And I think we've seen Virginia slowly move from the bottom half of states to the top half of states, but certainly we don't want to sit at number 20. Love to see Virginia continue to increase its commitment on energy efficiency, but that is progress that we should be celebrating, because there's a lot of action and activity and work and grit that has gone into where Virginia is today. So I want to leave you with a few thoughts on the policy and regulatory environment here in Virginia. Take them or leave them. These are just my thoughts. These are not anybody else's. But these are thoughts that I have on the future of energy efficiency in Virginia as, again, we move from the focus on the legislature and passing legislation to really on implementation where the rubber meets the road. So, number 1, this should be no surprise to you, but we are in a very significant load growth environment here in Virginia, experiencing load growth that you don't see in almost any other state nationally, right? So I think policymakers and regulators both understand the value of energy efficiency to help reduce our demand and also to help meet future demands. Second, and this is really related to the first, there is an increasing emphasis across the nation, this is not just in Virginia, on programs that have the benefit of creating demand flexibility, right, to reduce Virginia's peak load. And I think it will be really interesting to see how the commission, regulators, and implementers like you look at these emerging technologies and these new programs as a way to help shape and shift Virginia's demand side management portfolio. And then third, the commission is constantly in motion on energy efficiency dockets. There was just a recent decision on the most recent DSM portfolio. I think it was like DSM portfolio number 14 or something like that. And there was some discussion in that decision on compliance with the energy efficiency resource standard. And I think what we're going to see going forward is more significant investment in energy efficiency programs and in energy savings from those programs to get us back on track to meeting our energy efficiency resource standard. So all of that is to say, I think the future for energy efficiency in Virginia is incredibly bright. I would have said that 10 years ago. I would have said that 15 years ago. We've gone through a lot to get where we are now, and I think we're at a really wonderful prime place for implementation to just skyrocket. I'm excited to see how you meet that moment. And when I asked my sister, who is here with me today, how I should end this speech, she said, everybody likes a good call to action, which was easier when I was in the governor's office. Now I'm just an independent consultant, so I don't really have, as important of a voice. But I will say this, I challenge all of you to continue to do the hard work, I know you will, to roll up your sleeves on implementation, because sometimes it can be hard to sort of say, okay, we've done all this work, we've got all these great policies in place, now let's just let it coast. But really roll up your sleeves and do the hard work on implementation. And I think that will make all of the difference. So thank you for inviting me to be here with you today. It's been a pleasure and an honor. And I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.
Great. Thank you so much, Angela, for that optimistic speech. We really appreciate it. We are now going to move into a networking break. I imagine that Angela will be around for a little bit to answer any questions that you might have. But we also invite everyone to go out in the hallway. There's drinks, snacks, coffee, and mingle. We are trying something new this year. And so if you, we want to encourage everyone to talk to someone you haven't spoken to before. So you'll notice on your name tags, you all have stars. So look on your name tags check to see the star that you have. You might have blue, you might have red, gold, and go and find someone who has the same exact color star that you have. And ask them any questions you want, but here are just a couple that we've thought of. What do you see as the biggest opportunity for the energy efficiency industry? If you could make one change to the industry overall, what would it be and why? Or if you go with something fun and lighthearted, would you rather climb Mount Kilimanjaro or dive the Mariana Trench? What is your favorite EE tip? The sky's the limit, so just use these as examples of starting points. But we hope that you each will connect with one new person during the break. Thank you.
Oh, I see, I see. Yes, they go right here.
Yeah.
So I think something is and let some know. Did you know the questions? And the stars?
Yeah. That ideal. Do we want to talk things there?
Yeah, yes, see how much shorter that was. I do not want that anyway, shape, or form. Thank you. Well, well, we're actively trying to backfill the position, but until that happens, yeah. Which, you know, is fine. I, yeah, not until, yeah, not for a minute. And so hopefully by the time we're like talking about next year's stuff, we'll have somebody in. We've had one person who was really strong, and we have someone coming in tomorrow for an interview who comes really well recommended. So hopefully we'll be able to actually like do that. Awesome. Yep, me too.
I hope she left detailed instructions.
Very much so. She's so organized that it's just not, yeah,
Well, that's basically what it was.
Yeah. yeah. Here. Okay.
Yeah, you have a mic and there's a. Right, if everyone can take your seats, we are going to get started again. Personal preference. It's up to you, but there's.
Let's see the deck of mails, right?
Yeah.
Oh.
Lydia has a couple of slides. I think she's in here. Okay.
All right. I have a couple of stragglers. Everyone wants to come and take a seat. Get ready to learn all about multifamily 101 financing, whatever you want to learn about today. Whatever. Terrific. We have a terrific panel of experts. All right. Well, first, before I hand it over to my colleague, Rebecca, who's going to be moderating the panel, raise your hand. Who talked to someone new today during the break? All right. I love it. Yes, give yourselves a round of applause. Good job, everyone. All right. Now I'm going to hand it over to Rebecca, who is going to introduce the panel.
So welcome to our panel, the multifamily multiverse, navigating the maze of funding outside of fundraising. So it's no secret to everyone in this room, industry professionals, that multifamily housing is a very complex topic, from high-rise condos to public housing. From high-rise condos to public housing, allowing to employ that not skills. Residents and developers face unique and very large challenges. With new car wash and the Inflation Reduction Act and bipartisan infrastructure law with inflation emphasis on it, there's an urgent need to navigate how to save the cost. Today's panel will address the challenges navigating financing, split incentives, and personalized barriers to housing. We're excited to welcome the expert panel to the chat. Our first speaker will be Casey Gillespie. Casey joined BEIC in 2024 as Director of Consulting Operations to support BEIC growing role as a trusted energy efficiency partner. She was previously was one of its first employees and served as Executive Director in February this year. She also currently serves as Treasurer of the BEIC Board of Directors. Next is Stephen Butler. Stephen is the Vice President of Energy and Sustainability within the New Energy Group. And he's responsible for multifamily energy benchmarking, energy audits, energy modeling, and green building consulting to support green finance. He's also on the BEIC. Next, we have Bill Cunningham from Virginia Housing. Active in the affordable housing industry to prospect. Bill provides strategic support in program and process improvements, construction control, and special initiatives. With a background in community organization, organizing, and activism, he is interested in the ways housing can be a platform in society. And lastly, we welcome Sunshine Mountain with Piedmont Housing Alliance. Committed to supporting deeply equitable and sustainable affordable communities, Sunshine has helped development led the development of over 1,200 healthy, efficient homes in Texas and Virginia. As a nationally recognized leader at the intersection of climate studies and equitable, affordable housing development, Sunshine has consulted with a wide variety across local and national housing. So quick round of applause for all these awesome people.
All right. All right, here we are again. Just wanted to first say, looking around this room and hearing Angela talk, it's just really truly impressive to think through this implementation and where we are as an industry. These are all my buds in my first half of my career, and it takes everybody in this room to advocate and to advance for the work that we're all doing collectively. And we really truly are making a huge difference, and we should be proud of each other and ourselves. So I am new in my role at VEIC, just serving as the Director of Operations, and I have to share with you a little bit about the organization first. So I'll do that, and I'll try to be brief there. It's also my first time presenting on behalf of the organization, so please be easy on me. But I'll hope to talk to you a little bit about the IRA, both her and here, the funding and the timelines. I'll hope to also talk a little bit about the landscape as we're seeing it from more of like a national perspective, and provide a case study on the DC Sustainable Energy Utility, which we operate. So VEIC, you might not, I don't know if you've heard of us, but we're actually based in Burlington or Winooski, Vermont, and we are a nonprofit. So we've been around for about 40 years. We administer a variety of different energy efficiency utilities. And so that's Efficiency Vermont, DC Sustainable Energy Utility, and Efficiency Smart. We also team up to support other energy efficiency utilities. And so that's on California Tech, CalNext, which is a statewide emerging technologies, Hawaii Energy, everybody's trying to get there. I haven't gotten an invite yet, and Focus on Energy, which is for Wisconsin. The other part of the work that we do is on their consulting division. So that's the operation or the team that I serve on. And the work that we do really focuses on meeting our clients' needs to support their communities, their program participants, really in these focus areas of energy efficiency, building decarbonization, transportation electrification, and a little bit on that grid and flexibility, grid and clean and flexible grid. So we have staff, actually closer to 400 people now across the nation here. And we really have those 6 offices are just really well-resourced areas in which that we have the energy efficiency utility administration or teaming up to administer there. We also have an a broad team of engineers, folks in policy, government affairs. So really being able to see this work and what it's happening at a national perspective. We are well on our way. We have a company goal in order to achieve 131 million metric tons of greenhouse gas reduction by 2030. So you can see that we are well on our way to do that. The opportunity in which that we reach these goals is becoming harder and harder to achieve and more expensive, but that's due to all of our hard work and the work that we're making within the industry. We've helped to deploy $124 million in rebates, and that's rebates are incentives in order to do this work for our partners and clients. And we're actually seeing, that's so frustrating. And we're also seeing the returns there. We know that this works by our numbers of $4.9 billion the investment for return on these investments. Okay, so we're going to get into, hopefully this might be a refresher for many of us, but it might be helpful just to kind of recap on these details. So big picture nationally, this is the biggest, the Inflation Reduction Act is the biggest investment that we've had from a climate perspective. And really with the goal to reduce our emissions, greenhouse gas emissions by 42% by 2030. And we're doing that through a variety of grants, loans, and tax incentives. I know I'll be talking on the grants component of the IRA. I know Phil's going to be talking a little bit on GGRF and Solar for All, I hope, and LIHTC as well. Not to tee you up, but I think we've got that covered. But really, this is a 10-year time frame. And by each state getting a formula-based allocation, and the Virginia amount of that being 188 million for both her and here. We know that there's an election coming up, so you know, I think that that's part of the conversation, but I think there's broad consensus that given that these funds are formula-based, that they will be able to be deployed. So a little bit on the timeline, gosh, in 2022, does anyone remember that when we were all like jumping around? We're like, yes, this stuff is happening. And then we're like, what? Why isn't it going through, right? So we didn't get the program guidelines really out until the following year. And then from there, states could do that early application. Really in the last, I would say 6 months, or the 6 months that I've been with the company, seeing tremendous advancement. There's so much momentum across our country with the deployment of these resources. Lots of great work. And I'll share with you from my perspective a little bit about what I see the state energy offices doing as well. So there's this hard and fast deadline on January 31st, 2025. If states don't have their applications in, that's the deadline. So working with a variety of different states on their applications as well. And then we have until January 2030 to actually deploy these funds. So if you think about that timeline of 5 years, it's a very short window. And we've seen this before with resources becoming available of how to deploy those and get those out into the community. So to give some perspective, some of the states that we're already working with, Delaware, we're leading across Delaware, California, Connecticut, Vermont, and DC. And this can be a combination of her and here. It can also be a combination of planning, blueprint planning prints, blueprint plans, thank you, as well as implementation. So there's kind of two components here. There's the planning, and then there's actually implementing the work. So for the home energy rebates, that's that whole building. So taking up the whole building, we're talking residential, right? It's $4.3 billion nationally. And this funding is going to our state energy offices to provide those rebates and to figure out that energy saving retrofits for single family and multifamily buildings. That's what we're talking about here. And so really we're focused on air sealing, weatherization, and building measures. We're looking at all incomes and double down on that LMI. We can stack those tax credits. So that's something that I'll try to cover, and I'll look to my colleagues to also help me there. And states can determine per their program deployment if they're going to be going measured or modeled approach. And so you might be wondering what that is. Measured would be when we're actually doing like a Viridian's offering a green building certification meeting Energy Star. We're measuring and seeing what that entire building is modeling and measuring from in the field. Or states can opt for a modeled approach, which might be more like a DSM, a demand side management program, in which we have a modeled savings per energy measure. So there's also here, not to be confused, and these, if you've been following this, you know that these have changed names a few times, right? So it used to be here and Hera, and unfortunately I can't even remember the other one. So for here, the home efficiency electric appliance rebate, I thought it would just be helpful to touch on this, but not really go into it because I don't think it's as applicable for multifamily. But $4.5 billion nationally, again, to the state energy offices, point of sale. So that's, you go to Home Depot, you go to Lowe's, hopefully even a smaller retail provider, and you can receive up to $14,000 per measure, and that's specifically targeted for specific measures: heat pump water heaters, electric stoves, electrical panel or wiring, thinking about how these could be layered with other tax credits as well. Again, looking for LMI and focus there, and can also be stacked with our state utility and local incentives. Okay, so some of what the states have been actually looking at behind the scenes with their applications, and hopefully this is new-ish information or a good refresher for everybody, but at minimum, we have to address 40% LMI and making sure that 40% of those resources are going to our low-income households. Additionally, 10% must be allocated for low-income multifamily. If a state, there's a timeline for deployment, right? So we have to get, just as I said, those 5 years. If we can't demonstrate that we can deploy those resources, then we can go back to DOE. So this is just one thing, and trying to figure that income verification has been, I think, challenging, and looking to our partners that have already done a great job at doing that. And how can we reinforce some of these systems that are already in place? There's also a community benefit plan that has to be submitted with their application. And so this is engaging the local community, making sure that we're looking at our workforce and making sure that we are integrating and focusing on Justice 40 initiatives, as well as diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. All right, and then there's this whole other thing on program evaluation and customer experience. As we know, this is warrant its entire separate panel. The access, there has to be a demonstration of energy efficiency, and access to energy information is a very challenging environment, and we'll continue to navigate this together. So just here, I thought it'd be really helpful just to dig deep, a lot of details. I'm not going to read through all of it, but the specific on the modeled approach for multifamily, you'll see what the composition, first, what the building improvement must be. You'll also see the percent makeup and of what income, household income, and what would return and what that rebate amount would be. So I'm looking for all my developer friends to be clicking through on this, taking their phones out and capturing this, right? So some really detailed information, and you can see depending on the percent of improvement, and Sunshine, you've done some of these before, so you know where you stand in benchmark. You can see what the potential energy savings might be. We are seeing broadly that many states are opting for the modeled approach, really because, again, recognizing that short window that we need to deploy these resources. And so standing up the measured approach, which I'll go to next, does require some workforce investment and infrastructure. So we're seeing states looking in that direction, but we'll soon to see. For the measured approach, again, this is looking at the measured. These are what the benchmarks that we'd have to hit, both for composition of household income within a multifamily property, as well as the energy efficiency improvement and what would be the corresponding return. Okay, so thinking about what we can do with to maximize our resources. That 188 million is going to go quickly. If you think about the average household, I see Lee nodding his head. He knows, right? So you think about the average home to electrify about $26,000, and we're talking about maybe 14,000, depending on in the best case scenario. We need to be thinking through how to maximize these resources, and I know that our partners and our friends here in this room are hoping to do so. So for our weatherization, we can grade, but it has to be for distinct measures. Okay, so I think that that's very helpful to keep in mind. Both our federal loans and non-federal funding, so that'll be a greenhouse gas reduction fund, which we are just seeing some great momentum on that as well as energy efficiency utility and state and local dollars. These can co-fund, so it can be the same. You can co-fund any remaining costs for the same single upgrade. So as long as we're taking care of one, then we can continue grading on top of that. And then for the tax credits, I'm going to leave that. I'm going to leave that for later because I know that we'll receive a great deal of information there. I also had a much larger deck with tax credits. I said, oh no, Phil's got this covered. So just real briefly here, I'm going to try to do my best to articulate some of BEIC's work closest to home. You know, I'm very much, I love the work and I'm so proud of the work that we've done here in Virginia, and continue to hope that we can build relationships through BEIC as well. So a little case study on the DC Sustainable Energy Utility, which I believe stood up in, I'm looked at today, but I want to say it's 2010. But this was created through the Clean and Affordable Energy Act. It's a ratepayer funded, privately operated program. It's performance-based contract to Department of Energy Efficiency, and it's designed to fulfill DC's clean energy and climate goals. And so since 2011, I think when it officially stood up, helping residents in the community. So how they do that is really providing a slew of different services that enable both multifamily property owners as well as community members to figure out what are their optimization opportunities for energy efficiency within their buildings. So you can see some of the things that we offer here. And highlighting just a particular case study here, 653 units are represented at Paradise at Parkside, affordable multifamily. So two different strategies here were utilized. First, solar for all, as well as the affordable housing retrofit program, accelerator program, excuse me. And so you can see kind of the impact within the 653 units, how we were able to make sure that we were investing in the right places and how we could leverage all the different funding sources, as well as recognizing the different household incomes in order to maximize the energy efficiency opportunities. Okay, I'm going to stop talking and hand it over. I think I'm handing it to Phil, but here's my contact information. Also, please know that we do have a government affairs team, so that's really cool. And Dan and Chandler helped me with this presentation. They'd be happy to reach out to you as well. Thank you. Oh, it looks like yeah, looks like you're
think we could fit 2 more people up on stage. So anybody else want to try to fit? Well, good afternoon. My name is Stephen Evanko. I'm with Dominion Due Diligence Group. Happy to be here with you today. I've been with the board for, gosh, 5 years, 6 years. It's been a while. So, oops. All right.
I love it when board members ask. Yeah, just fine.
No,
Your turn.
My
There you go.
TV is not.
this doesn't work.
That does not.
All right, that was a trick.
It was.
Gotcha.
All right, so where you want me to go?
Just advance the turn or an arrow down.
Ah, there we go. All right, the first test is to see who can read this slide. All right, sorry. So as a way of introduction, Dominion Due Diligence Group, we work with lenders, we work with multifamily owners, developers, housing authorities all over the U.S. And primarily, most ways we're focused with HUD, but we do LIHTC, we work with Fannie, Freddie, all the different programs that are out there. And what we try to provide is a one-stop shop to help development owners get through that financing. So we've got a team that does consulting with housing authorities to help structure deals. We've got a team that does environmental site assessments, from NEPA studies to radon studies, all things that are required now with HUD. We've got the capital needs assessment teams, architectural review teams, and then I lead our energy and sustainability team, and we work with helping to get energy audits done to help owners be able to access a lot of these green financing programs. I was asked today to talk about HUD's Green Resilient Retrofit program. So I'll talk a little bit about that program, and I will also talk about a market rate program that's been in effect for going on 8+ years. It's been incredibly effective in the marketplace. Let me start by saying the IRA has created just tremendous opportunities for our industry. You guys know that, tremendous opportunities for society, but it's also amped up the level of complexity of trying to understand how all these pieces put together. Casey did a great job showing how I think a lot of these programs can fit, and we've got a great panel here to go deeper into that. All right, so let's start with GRRP. Probably not one of the best acronyms out there. I've heard GRIP. I like GRIP better, but none of them have stuck. This was actually, when you looked at the IRA in terms of speed of implementation, it's been frustrating, I think, for a lot of us. You know, the 45L tax credit kind of that took off right away in terms of availability. The GRRP program actually got out pretty quick in terms of letting people apply for it. Applications started in June of 2023. I'm just going to give you an overview of this program. This is probably about an hour-long presentation to go into the details of it. It was $500 million in grant authority and $1.5 billion in loan authority that was set up that came out of the IRA. And the funding was set up to be either in form of a grant, straight grant, or a 1% cash surplus loan. So it was really, obviously a great deal if you could make it work. One of the challenges is that the eligibility was limited to project-based rental assisted, so the Section 8, which is not everything that's in HUD's portfolio. So that did limit some of the properties that could apply for it. And the target of this initiative really was to go after energy efficiency, deep retrofits, and climate resiliency. And that's the way the program was structured. There are 3 different buckets, and each designed to sort of tackle a different subset. The Element Awards, the Leading Edge Awards, and the Comprehensive Awards. So Elements was set up as a program to help projects that were already in process of doing a recapitalization event. And maybe just through that process, of course, we all experienced inflation and the need to value engineer. We would lose some of the energy efficiency components in the projects that we wanted to do. So this program was really designed to help get some money back into that. The amounts were limited to $750K per project and $40,000 per unit. The Leading Edge bucket, which was the next one, is probably one of the most popular of the 3, was a different story. That was a much more ambitious green program. They really wanted to go after and reward developers that had some experience delivering green retrofits, but to help them take it to that next level. Because as many of you know, going on a deep energy retrofit, addressing climate resiliency, it's challenging to make the economics of that work. And you really need that incremental funding to make electrification work. So part of the requirement of this program was that you had to get an ambitious green building certification. So we worked with a lot of owners on doing the energy audit to figure out what it would take to get certifications such as net NGBS gold with a net zero badge. So just think, very deep energy retrofit, electrification, get as much solar on that site as we can. And if we couldn't get any more solar on the site, then we would buy renewable energy credits to fill in the pieces. The other nice thing about this program is it was based on need. So they looked at the applicants and tried to pick the applicants across the US that had the properties that were the least energy efficient and had systems that were in the most need. And then finally, the comprehensive bucket. Now, this was a bigger award. This was up to 20 million per project and 80,000 per unit cap. This was really for projects and teams that weren't really quite sure what they were going to do. They knew they had a property that was in real deep need of help and maybe was facing some pretty significant climate risks. And so what the folks that get that award would have is they would have a whole team from HUD that would come in and work with them to do capital needs assessments, a deep energy audit, a renewable energy assessment, climate resiliency studies, all that to try to help them really kind of take their property to the next level. So, as I mentioned, we're well into this program. And in fact, the awards period wrapped up this summer. 3 of the 4 element rounds have actually been already decided with 72 properties awarded across the US. In most cases, these ended up being, they followed prescriptive rules. So if you were doing a solar array, they would cover 100%. If you were doing an electrification project, albeit sometimes harder to pull that off, they would cover 100% of that cost up to the limit. But then other things like Energy Star 7.0 windows, you got maybe 30% of the cost. So there was a very strict formula applied. As of right now, and there's one more award that should be announced soon. I know of one Virginia project that got it. So these, again, competitive, a lot of, folks across the US put in awards or put in applications. The leading edge, this one actually was even more popular. These applications are all in, and all the decisions have been made. The awards have been made. There is still a chance that some of the folks that got the award might not be able to pull the other sources of funding together to make it work, and they may give it back. We've seen that happen on a couple of deals. If that happens, HUD's going to go back to their list and pull from that list and make additional awards. But with this one, we have up to $10 million on a project that's being assigned, and what's covered is basically anything that contributes to you getting to that green certification. So it's a lot easier than a lot of the prescriptive rules. In this case, we have 4 projects in Virginia that actually got awards. There's one in Fredericksburg, one in Charlottesville, and then 2 in Newport News. And then our firm is actually working on projects across the US. We've got projects in Kentucky, Arizona, Texas, Wyoming, just to show that we could actually really cover the US, and New Jersey. So comprehensive. This one, there's one more round yet to be announced, and that one should be coming soon. This is the one where, again, HUD would wrap a whole team around the project to help them figure out what their scope of improvement would be. They really targeted these awards to projects that, again, had the greatest energy need, and that was done by benchmarking the property and seeing where their Energy Star portfolio manager score was, but also looking at their climate risk score, which came out of the FEMA National Risk Database. It was interesting to see that actually getting used in decision. 2 projects in Virginia got awards, one down in Suffolk and one in Hampton Roads, and we are working with some projects in other parts of the country on this one. So excited to see how this would come forward. Now, I will say HUD got an early start on this, but as you may well know, nothing in the government, the federal government necessarily moves as fast as we would want. Only a handful of deals have actually closed at this point, so there's still a lot that's kind of yet to work its way through. All right, I have one more slide. So we'll talk a lot today and with the speakers that we have up here today about affordable housing and opportunities there. But there's still other things in the IRA that benefit market rate housing as well. And frankly, market rate housing needs its push to get where it needs to be on the energy efficient front too. So we'll talk about the 45L, there's the investment tax credit for solar. I want to talk about a program now that's actually been in existence since 2016. It's HUD's Green Mortgage Insurance Premium Program. And I bring it up because it's another example of where you can really sort of braid funds together and different sources to get interest rates down. And if there's any one topic that's really important today when you talk to a developer, it's how do you get my interest rate down? Because it's been painful in the marketplace. This program launched in 2016. Effectively what it does is it takes the mortgage insurance premium in the first year from 100 basis points to 25 basis points. And then going forward, it takes it from 60 basis points to 25 basis points every year of the life of the loan. You're a long-term hold on a property. This is probably one of the best deals in the market you will ever find. The return on investment for getting that green certification and the requirements typically pays for itself in the first year. It's a win. This program does works on new construction, works on existing buildings. It even works in assisted living and skilled nursing as well. And the requirements, we've helped hundreds of developers through this process. A couple of things you have to do. You have to make sure you're going to have an energy efficient building. What we do is we model the consumption of the building, or we benchmark it, and we make sure that it's going to score a 75 or better in Portfolio Manager. The second thing, and this is a unique thing to this program, is HUD requires that you benchmark your property every year of the life of the loan and maintain a score of 75 or better. I haven't seen many other green financing programs that have that kind of hook on the back end where they're actually making you measure and deliver it. One of the challenges with that we see across the US is to benchmark multifamily properties that are individually metered. How do we get access to that data, that tenant data? A lot of utilities are getting much better about providing aggregated data to let us do this. But there's still pockets of the US this is maddeningly frustrating. The EPA has actually got a program going right now to try to work with the industry and help advance that. Two more things. You have to get a green building certification. A lot of projects will pursue NGBS or craft. And Energy Star multifamily new construction. It's a hard certification to get. A lot of mandatory practices you have to meet. But when you marry that with the 45L tax credit, it starts to become a very enticing option. And we'll hear more about that in a second. And then finally, you also have to make sure that you hit Energy Star appliances, Energy Star heat pumps, WaterSense plumbing fixtures, things like that. I have one final comment, and then I'll turn it over to Phil. This year, we also got word from HUD that they are raising the bar. There's a sort of an energy baseline bar for anything going the HUD route in new construction, and they're jumping it all the way up to the 2021 energy codes. ASHRAE 90.1 will be 2019. So, for states that are already on this advanced code, maybe not as big a deal. For states that haven't been on that code, you want to be in the HUD space, you have to now play at that top level. And that's going to go into effect May of 2025. So if there's one thing, to end on is the bar continues to go up. We as an industry need to kind of keep up with that and have the resources ready to help the portfolio take that next step. So thank you.
All right, good afternoon. Phil Cunningham, Assistant Director of Tax Credit Programs at Virginia Housing. For those of you who may not know, Virginia Housing is our state's housing finance agency. We help Virginians attain quality affordable housing through these three main kind of buckets: through ownership, rental housing, and outreach and education. Here's just some quick stats of our 2023 rental portfolio. Nearly 3,000 units, rental units financed, the majority of those for LMI populations. So low-income housing tax credit, LIHTC. If you're not super familiar with it, it's a federal framework that is through the Treasury Internal Revenue Code, Section 42, basically sets out income and rent limits for the apartments. And it's, actually a really great example of public and private partnerships, bringing that private money through the public tax credit. Every state is different and has its own quirks and specifics through what we call the Qualified Allocation Plan, or QAP. In Virginia, we also have a manual that kind of spells out some more details and tries to clarify certain things. We actually do have a update for 2025 that is pending approval from the governor's office, so that'll take effect January 1. And this, the QAP basically lines out various policy priorities, but because we also update it every 2 to 3 years, it allows us to iterate and provide some innovation in there. So one thing, certain incentives you might see in one version of the QAP might go away the next time, or can be, just kind of updated to try to work a little bit better. So when we say policy influence design, it means things like this. We do have minimum design and construction requirements. So new construction, for example, we do have, you must meet Energy Star certification. So it's our fault for doing that. And we have, yeah, everyone likes this. Maybe not all the developers like that, but I like it. So we do have the baseline energy efficiency at new construction, Energy Star. If it's a rehab, we have to do minimum HERS score or improvement percentage. We also have optional certifications as well. NGBS, Earthcraft, LEED, those are all options. Various amenities, unit mixes, accessibility, and universal design, which is kind of a Virginia Housing's version of aging in place standards. So in talking about efficiency, again, you can see the baseline and optional certifications and some of the other enhancements that we incentivize through our point system in our application. So things like dehumidification systems, low flow water, and then more recently, we've reinstituted renewable energy and solar incentives. So what does a typical budget look like for a LIHTC project? On the left, you can see we have two types of tax credits, a 4% and a 9%. That blue section is the equity that the LIHTC investor provides. And so when we're talking about all these green incentives and the tax credits and the grants and things, what are we trying to do? We're trying to fill that gap. That's that green bar at the top, or improve the debt. And I say improve, not reduce, because of just the way that those finances have to be structured per the EPA. So the first one has been mentioned is the 45L credit. It existed before the Inflation Reduction Act, but the IRA really just improved and extended it. And you can see here in this matrix, if you're meeting your Energy Star for new construction, or you're getting that Zero Energy Ready home certification. So if you're getting high E funding, as long as that's around from DHCD, that you'll meet that ZER certification. You can get that base amount, and if you're meeting the prevailing wage, if you have Davis-Bacon requirements, you can get all the way up to $5,000 per year. So it's a very critical thing for projects. We've seen a lot more projects putting it into their LIHTC applications. So it's not it's not going to solve any problems, but it certainly helps a lot, and that's what we've been seeing. The other one we've been seeing a lot is this solar investment tax credit, section 48 of the IRA. So this is about generation and storage. You can see here in this graphic, basically, depending on how you're approaching the project, you can stack up these different amounts, up to 70% of your investment on putting in the solar. And so that's the panels, that's the batteries, and all the other components that go into that, from wiring even. So if you can get a base of 6%, again, prevailing wages, if you're in an energy community bonus or a domestic content, which I know we're all kind of trying to figure out still, especially with the Build America, Buy America, or BABA. And then again, if you're doing a LIHTC program, you get additional 10 to 20%. So those are the two kind of like, you can do that right now. And then these next couple slides, I'll be talking about the 3 buckets from the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, which is coming through the EPA, as opposed to the GRP, which came through HUD. All these acronyms. So this is nationally $27 billion into $7 billion for Solar for All, $6 billion for the Clean Communities Investment Accelerator, and then the $14 billion for the National Clean Investment Fund. And again, this is all to get towards a goal of net zero by 2050. Pretty ambitious, but I think we can do it. For all of these programs, as Casey mentioned, these are targeted toward LIDAC communities or low-income and disadvantaged communities. It is difficult to do that income verification, but the EPA and the DOE do have some mapping tools available. So you can see these links at the bottom of the screen here. I'm sure you can Google it or whatever your preferred browser. So that'll help kind of like as you're planning for new developments and figuring out where to target your own work. You can just use some of that visualization. And again, that's a minimum of 40% program-wide, but some of these do have 100% targets for LIDAC, such as Solar for All. This is being run by Virginia Energy. They have a $156 million award with the aim to save residents and owners 20% of bill savings. Again, they are working with EPA to kind of finalize all these things, but effectively targeting September 2025, last I heard, to get that rolled out. They just hired a new program manager for that. He's going to be really awesome. She's a friend of mine. But, you know, it's going to be targeting single and multi-community solar, as well as various infrastructure and interconnection, because I know that's another big stumbling block as we try to, you know, ramp up our solar and renewable production. And so financial assistance, so that's, you know, low cost loans, things like that, as well as technical assistance will be available. The next one is the Clean Communities Investment Accelerator. Additionally, this is $6 billion, also 100% low income and disadvantaged communities. This is really being run through our CDFI community, community development banks, institutions, and really intended to build capacity of the various local communities and local community lenders. So there's kind of a flow down waterfall of the funding. But again, it's both for technical assistance, up to like 20-25% technical assistance can be awarded, as well as capitalization of funds. And so that's going to be your debt, equity, or credit enhancements, getting that interest rate lower. Generation, storage, net zero buildings, and zero emissions transportation. So maybe that's you know, charging stations at your apartment community, things like that. You can see here are the list of awardees, sort of in their hierarchy. Not that there is a hierarchy, but in their amounts of awards: Opportunity Finance Network, Inclusive Justice Climate Fund, Appalachian Community Capital, which focuses primarily on the Appalachian region, and the Native CDFI Network. The big one is the National Clean Investment Fund, NCIF, $14 billion nationally. These have gone to 3 national awardees: Climate United, the Coalition for Green Capital, and Power Forward Communities. And you can see here kind of Climate United and Power Forward's organizations. And these are, again, really low cost capital to projects and to project owners. So low cost subordinate loans that can also, again, be used for technical assistance, outreach, engagement, education, and program administration. In terms of timing, these are, they have gotten their final awards from the EPA. They are still kind of massaging all of their program agreements with EPA. So what's going to happen next is those three recipients will then send out RFPs and qualify various community lenders. Virginia Housing might be one, we'll see. But other CDFIs, local and regional banks as well, will apply to get money from the national awardees to then award out to specific projects. Some of the national awardees will additionally make direct investments. So Climate United, for example, may make certain direct loans to projects. If you're interested in that, like reach out to them. Everyone's really interested in working and talking with people. They have some standardized loans that they're planning to provide, but they're also flexible enough to work with folks as needed. So if you're interested in Virginia Housing possibly being one of those community lenders, talk to me and you can help support my my effort in that internally. And in terms of what that means for the borrowers and what that process looks like, this the brighter green section here on the slide, basically you'll need firms like D3G, like Veridian, like the EIC to assist in the technical underwriting process. So it's going beyond just the phase one environmental, but also getting that carbon and greenhouse gas emission measurement. And then so that way the lenders, such as Virginia Housing, can use that to quantify and do some cost estimation of that scope increase and seeing, how that money can be braided. Again, there's potential for upfront dollars for the technical assistance and planning. A large amount of the capital is, will be intended, again, kind of depending on who the recipient, the primary national recipient is, but it may be released kind of on a drawdown basis. So as you do the work, you'll get a portion of the money rather than kind of that chunk up front, just to ensure all the work is getting done as needed. Of course, there's always compliance issues, as we know. BABA, you mentioned Davis-Bacon, and the Justice 40 for the low-income disadvantaged communities will be big ones. And then I think everyone from the national recipients to the community lenders are, really interested in figuring out how much reporting are we going to have to do, all the technical advisors in the room, how much paperwork, how much additional paperwork are you going to have to do to report up, figuring out how to integrate this stuff into our existing processes, rather than trying to recreate the wheel will be another big one. And, both for lenders or other, folks in the room, how do we kind of green our existing products, or do we really have to make new products that kind of fit into this mold to access that capital? Yeah, so it's a lot about the different financing aspects. And now we go to sunshine for how it all comes together in the life.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sunshine Maton. I'm at Piedmont Housing Alliance, and we are a nonprofit affordable housing organization based in Charlottesville and serving the broader region west of Richmond. Before I get into the slide here, and I only have one slide, just FYI, there's a lot packed in here. You can see all the acronyms that have already been referenced, but just a little bit of history. I've been at this intersection of affordable housing, energy efficiency, and solar for 20 years now. Most of my time before being here in Virginia was in Austin, Texas, where I was working for a nonprofit there. And by the time I left, we had installed over 1 megawatt of solar in distributed solar across our various affordable housing communities at a time when that was a rarity. We also had one of the only sort of carbon offset investments to reduce some of our costs that came through enterprise at the time. We explored a whole different array of models for how to track the energy utility data that was referenced briefly as a real big hurdle in a lot of this work. So a lot of experimentation because there wasn't a protocol to follow. There wasn't a standardized methodology to follow. We are actually some of the first Lead for Homes Platinum projects in the country as well at the time. When I came to Virginia 7 years ago, I would say to a little bit, to be perfectly candid, I felt like I was stepping backwards in time, about 5 years or so. No shade. I know, no shade, no shade. And that's compared to Austin. Austin's a little bit of an outlier in that regard. But what I did see is a lot of like energy push wanting to grapple with these issues, and it had like in tremendous progress over the last 7 years, and where we are now is just it's pretty stunning. But that leads into I'm going to talk about one of the projects here on the top of the screen. Kindlewood, formerly known as Friendship Court, was an existing it still is an existing project-based Section 8 community in Charlottesville that we have owned and operated with a partner organization for the last close to 20 years now, although we were not the original developers. We went through a really deep engagement and design process with the residents to determine what they wanted their future community to look like, because the existing housing was in significant disrepair, was designed at a time when in the late 70s, when they were like the architectural and site design sort of isolated them economically, socially from the surrounding community. So there was an opportunity to kind of really revision a new way of the neighborhood connecting. So phase one, and that's one of the buildings on phase one, is the first of 4 phases that was designed in partnership with residents. And one of the things they lifted up was utility costs. And healthy interiors and fresh air inside. That was, and but also daylight, like the simple things that some of us take for granted, were really big issues for them. So early on, before Reggie, before any of the IRA funding, we were already looking at pursuing deep energy efficiency work, and actually we're looking at pursuing passive house certification in this first phase of development. And then the timing of when Reggie passed and when IE dollars came to bear, and then not that long after when IRA dollars started, the IRA passed, and the promise of those dollars came down the road, we were actually ready for it, and because we had already sort of committed with the residents to kind of do that kind of work. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the braiding of funding, and I will say, for those who are not familiar, the affordable housing industry, those of us who do the work on the developer side, it's a little bit of a double-edged sword. On the one hand, we are highly accustomed to braiding dollars. We do it every day, all day long. There are probably 15 sources of funding in Kindlewood phase one by the time we're done. That is what we do, because there's no singular source that makes it possible otherwise. We have to pull them together, particularly if we're going to be doing deep energy efficiency work, which has higher costs, but that we can't recoup through higher rent costs because we are actually doing affordable housing. So that work of planning for that and being ready for that is really important. And what it allowed us to do is be ready for GRRP when it came down the road. So you heard folks talk about it here. GRP, even though it was designed specifically, ideally for retrofits, there's a little bit of a loophole that allows new construction to also do it, and we happen to fit that loophole. So we were one of the first leading edge awardees for the GRP, one of those 4 projects that Stephen mentioned. It came, we maxed out at about $6 million in terms of the amount of dollars that came in. It also is a little bit of a double-edged sword. On the one hand, $6 million, that is fantastic to facilitate the work that we are already planning on doing. But we applied in June 2023. We were awarded in October 2023. This morning at 9:30 a.m., we got our approval, which is great, but it's also, you know, almost a year since the time we got the award, and it actually delayed our construction by 6 months because that was the last piece. We're just waiting on that final approval. So like many of these sources, even though they are fantastic in their ideology, in their ideation, the implementation side, we always face challenges. So just bringing some reality to that as well. So we also pursue 45L. On that project in particular, you can see the solar on the roof there. We were one of the first nonprofits to take advantage of the direct pay and bonus ITC, or investment tax credit, that comes with solar. So we applied to the IRS, got the 20% booster because we're in a qualifying census tract and we're doing affordable housing. So you get 20% on top of the base 30%. That allows us to get the 50%. But again, back to the double-edged sword, we still have to front the cost for the array. We don't get the ITC, including the bonus, until we submit our end of year financials. Even though we don't pay taxes as a nonprofit, it still comes through that mechanism. So we still have to front the cost and figure out how to finance it in the interim. It was I think it was Phil who referenced the low-income housing tax credit program and the fact that the QAP has been pushing forward energy efficiency work for quite a long time. And frankly, I think that highlights the fact that actually, when you look writ large across the country, the affordable housing industry has been the vanguard of energy efficiency and maybe not solar work, but energy efficiency work in the multifamily sector, hands down compared to the market rate sector, because you have states like Virginia and other locations that prioritize projects that pursue that kind of investment. So it's a really, I strongly support the continued evolution of that as we move forward. And then we also were one of the first projects to be awarded the high E funds, the Housing Innovation Energy Efficiency, which are RGGI dollars that came through from the state of Virginia when we joined RGGI a few years back. And then I'll talk a little bit about a project under construction, the lower right-hand corner, Hickory Hope Apartments. We are pursuing basically the same array of sources, but this project is not project-based Section 8, so we were not eligible for GRRP. So we're using every other tool in the bucket as much as we can. And then I want to talk, and I know we're running close on time here, so I'll just talk a little bit looking to the future and other projects that we have in the pipeline. We are about a week away from hitting the submit button on an EPA community change grant, which is also IRA funded, up to $20 million and it's intended not for specific projects necessarily, it's intended more for community impact. So they're looking for a consortium of applicants that come together to do multiple projects, multiple layers of innovation, everything from tree planting to energy efficiency to cleanup to a whole range of things. And we're going to be doing all of those in central Charlottesville in the Fifeville neighborhood, trying to braid in there are a couple of projects that we do in the multifamily side, but also a new grocery store, doing solar, a whole range of things, and doing solar on a local middle school. Our consultants say we have a strong application, but we also don't know how many strong applications they're going to be we're up against. But we're hitting the submit button less than a week from now. Phil also talked about NCIF and CCIA. Really, we still don't really know what those are going to look like. We've been in sort of this limbo state for a while, and I participate in every webinar possible, trying to get more information. I know the primary awardees are still in negotiation or in the final negotiations and program design and so forth with the various entities overseeing it. So I'm hopeful we'll see those details emerge shortly. But Phil pointed out that those dollars are really intended as low-cost lending capital that will funnel through lending institutions. Well, we are, in addition to being a nonprofit affordable housing developer, we're also a CDFI, a Certified Development Financial Institution. So we're looking at it through that lens too, as the possibility of accruing capital that we can then lend into our community for a wide variety of issues. And the fundamental goal of that 27 billion writ large is to create, like, to seed this industry of lending capital that will revolve and continue to persist and grow this work over time. So it's really exciting. I'm going to pause there. I think there's not much time left, and then we can leave it for questions. And so thank you.
So as Chelsea mentioned earlier, we're going to do a little bit of additional live polling. So this time I figured out how to put it up on your screen. If you will go to the QR code, oh wait, no, I took the QR code away. If you'll go to the QR code or the link that's on your screen, we'll be able to go to the next couple of questions. But we're having an extra layer of awesomeness here. That is, we're going to pose these questions to our expert panelists to get their feedback as well. So let me know. Thumbs up if you're ready. Okay, turn on thumbs. Okay. All right. So I'm going to start with Phil. What are the biggest obstacles preventing consumers from participating in energy efficiency programs?
Great question. Well, I think largely it's knowing how to access the capital to do the improvements, and which is why we're all here today to talk about this. We like working to do more panels and other lines, so we can to push forward. I would say getting access to the capital.
And we didn't even talk about Virginia housing first time.
No kidding. It's not my fault.
Anybody else want to sign off? Sound off?
Mary. Yeah. I think one of the real challenges for a significant portion of our population are renters. Like it really depends on the rental property owner to be the vehicle by which that work happens. So as much as there has to be outreach and education and facilitation for homeowners, doing it for multifamily owners is going to be just incredibly crucial, or it will not touch a lot of folks in our community who are the lowest income and just live in rental communities. And actually on that, I want to add one other thing too, which is that it doesn't directly relate to this question, but it's the extent like the access to utility data that continues to be this huge burden. And actually for multifamily building owners, it's this huge burden of like, how energy efficient is my building? Don't know. Without having that data. So one thing I forgot to mention in my presentation, just to highlight, all the developments that we're doing from this point forward are master metered buildings with private submeters, so that we sidestep that hurdle. Although we have had one unintended consequence of that I did not anticipate, which I just came up yesterday, which is our low-income residents who no longer have Dominion utility accounts are no longer now eligible for Dominion rebated utility assistance. So I now have to think that. But what it does do is it fundamentally allows me those solar arrays that you saw in that building now actually go directly into that master meter. And then before the residents receive the utility bill, the solar offsets their consumption. So they get the direct benefit of those residents, which is a real challenge in most neighborhoods.
Okay. You want to move to the next question?
Yeah.
All right. Any other barriers to consumer participation in energy efficiency programs that are not already mentioned? Or what are any other barriers?
So Stephen, you have a microphone. You get to go. I'm big on volunteering people to do things.
You know, I think there's a lot of,
I don't think you're on.
how about now? There we go. So I think there's a lot of areas in making sure that consumers, understand what the opportunities are. Sometimes rewriting multiple stories that people have, you know, you've got to push for education, proper sense of self- that's kind of frustrating. Getting back to that conversation. So I think that's one of the things that we deal with. The other thing I was thinking of barriers for us, is of course having access to training skill workforce. They can do different things. Now this is something where EAs put forward to help in the beginning to advance that. I've already but I see this all across. We work in every state and we try to hire sometimes it's hard to find that experience.
Casey, you want to say anything?
Sure. I would say in advance to in addition to the workforce, it's also enhanced tech qualifications and standards so that we can ensure that we have best practices in implementing. I think those are the three that I've already picked out. So it's data access, there was workforce, one other, but consumer messaging, you know, just making sure access to the right programs and really how are you going to be able to take advantage of them. I do think that these funds are going to go quickly, at least on the IRA program here. And so continue to expand our networks, build partnerships, so just that we can leverage these resources to maximize.
And you know, I said technical assistance probably about 50 times talking about those different sources, but part of that also includes workforce development. So these IRA funds, but the CCIA, all that money or portion of it can also be used for workforce development. So, you know, I don't have all the specifics, but if you're an organization that is training and hiring folks to do the technical work of installation, of measurement, and all these things, and you can craft a training program, however large or small, that may be one place to access the funds for your organization and continue to build out the and yeah, in addition with just access and all of that, not just capital, but I think the best practice is that we need to make it easy on ourselves and each other and really figuring out, you know, what does need to be measured, what doesn't need to be measured, or reporting on our office. So we can be more impactful and more efficient and not just spread bureaucracy. And I mean, yeah, as a quasi-governmental institution, and I'm sure there's been an issue. Yeah, just figuring out how to be efficient. And I just add one thing too, which is I think that particularly in more rural communities, what's going to be effective is working with community-based organizations as the vehicles for educating and including, you know, those organizations then working with either volunteers or paid part-time folks from the community to be part of that outreach and education. I think we see that over and over again as the way to connect. People trust their peers. People rarely trust the government, and they often trust community-based organizations. So that trust is as important as the education.
Great. All right, one more question for you, plural. What do you think are the biggest gaps in owner and resident understanding about energy saving options for multifamily buildings?
Let me say that one more time.
What do you think are the biggest gaps in owner and resident understanding about energy saving options for multifamily buildings?
So we have a couple multiple choice if you want to ideas. So what products or services are available, how much money they could save, how to start using the energy saving options, and long-term benefits of saving energy or other.
I'm gonna go with other. I, since the point that articulated earlier, just split the benefit of multifamily housing. And so, will a multifamily building owner feel that it's worth it? I guess I can't on the gap, but I see it as very, necessary.
And I think with the build off of that, I would say is some of the programs that are actually starting to break that down. Because, you know, that green MIP program, I've seen multiple developers and they never would ever thought about but they're really better. But now because the interest rates knock down, you know, that's a big deal. So
And I think it's also maybe not necessarily a gap in understanding between the owner and residents, but you know, it's also how are we telling residents, or how are we messaging to residents what the effect is, how they can take advantage. Like, yeah, money in the pocket because they're lower to one thing. Helping the homes are another. But like, what are those changes? It's like take advantage of those messaging opportunities, but also, you know, I think benchmarking and things like that. How do residents see that on that too? It's oh, I know how much you think.
You know, to that point, it is hard for people to sometimes look at their bills and understand that investment actually start to pay off. If they don't understand heating degrees and cooling degrees and why they feel like they fired that now. So a lot of people can do it pretty complicated. So the more we can simplify it, the better.
All right.
The other aspect that I would go into is, I'll use French Report page 1 as an example. So we wrapped up construction the end of 2023 because we have tax credits and all these other funding sources. We have to get people in at a certain time. There's this real urgency to meet those deadlines, lest we lose money or lose tax credits. What that meant in this particular circumstances, we had invested a lot of money in high efficiency, sophisticated equipment, sophisticated systems, new dryers, heat bar heaters, etc. There are things that are unfamiliar to many of these folks. And in particular, a large part of the Fortune population are refugees who have little experience in general with heating, like even just heat pumps as a general rule. So the educational process to actually have them feel comfortable with and actually use the equipment properly so that it actually does save energy it continues to be a challenge. And going back to my time in Austin, we were investing in VRF and high efficiency heat pumps way back then. And the biggest impediment was the thermostats. It was, you know, before Nest existed, Nest thermostats existed, but even so, when Nest did come out, we didn't interface with those systems. So it didn't matter. So these really complicated thermostats that nobody could understand, including our maintenance staff. And the result was people actually wasted more energy or thought that their systems weren't working, so they just opened the damn window. So that education piece has to be part and parcel of the system efficiency integration.
All right, thank you so much. We're gonna check the time. We've got about 5 minutes for additional Q&A. So if you have one very good question or two very brief questions, raise your hand and Jess will come around with the mic.
I wish I had the luxury to say yes. But we didn't have that luxury. We couldn't turn any source down. Back to the point of like, technically, we were closing on phase one during the pandemic and costs were on this incredible trajectory of increase. We needed scavenge every source possible. And frankly, the only thing that saved us in the end allowed us to close in late 2020, whatever, in the pandemic. I don't know. The only thing that saved us was Virginia Housing because they didn't bring more dollars to the table, but they sort of did. They lowered their interest rate on the lending that allowed us to close the gap to that reduced interest rate. We could not, even with all the other sources, we could not have gone across the finish line for not for that end because of the increasing cost of legislation. If I had to do it over again in the context of not a pandemic, and then maybe we could have a different conversation, but in that context, no choice.
Question is, as I listen to you all talk about your work in the multifamily space, one of the challenges that we'll run into with a multifamily, I'll have for advice on this is primarily we participate in the build-out programs, a lot of multifamily and some single family. The challenge we run into is getting in to take the money. So you all are working some elaborate, complex financing work, and a lot of the stuff that we do is pretty simple, straightforward utility. They're not based rings, and we just run into the barrier of getting them to accept it. There'll be tips on getting through the signature for the people that will take this. It sounds like y'all are doing a very hot.
Yeah, exactly. Are you speaking of the multifamily owners you're
Yes. So, for example, if there's utility money that needs to be spent out quickly and we want to do it to apply heat pumps to a canal on a senior property, I may scout out property and see multiple pumps. Hey, this looks like it'll apply to you. You're on the HUD, I check this. It's just difficult to get everything free money.
I'm not sure. I don't have a good answer to that, other than to say that the work of administering affordable housing is as hard and burdensome as it is to build it in the first place. And the only reason I bring that up is because people are stretched thin. We struggle on a daily basis with following through and all the things that we say we can and want to do. Our staff, through the pandemic and forward, I continue to be stretched. And I'm not throwing that out there as an excuse, but what I'm saying is that the ability to digest and take something new, unless you have somebody who has the ability to step back and really think about it, it's hard to disrupt the day-to-day because you're just trying to put one foot in front of the other. That being said, I think where there may be opportunity, going back to what I was saying before around relationships, you can find a multifamily owner that's successful and gone through the program, and they can be your communicator as to what the benefit was to them and their residents. You're probably going to get more traction that way when you're talking, peer to peer, I would imagine. Anyway,
I think you might have some perspective on this too, Sunshine, but I think just timing of where the life cycle of the building is, so for tax credits, they're essentially on a 15 to 20 year life cycle between refinancing. So, even though it's free money, I think to some owners, they may be wondering, is it worth my headache or time and space to engage in that if I don't need to? And so maybe part of that is really trying to decide one of the dollar savings over the next 5 to 6 years before they have to do it. That's just like
We don't want to bring it on. All right. Justin, do we have time for one more or no? My phone's over there. All right, we can do one more question. Lori.
County has passed CPACE as well as the tax credit. Is there anything else us localities need to consider to make all of those decisions?
I don't know how much control over the development offering, but there might be a way and additional resources they could partners to, as you for example, I'd say, I don't think the tax credits, you know, if the financing is just really challenging. So if there's any additional resources that we can leverage and to be graded on the existing finance structure, I'd say that. Yeah, huge opportunity.
Yeah, it's figuring out as a locality, you know, figuring out are there certain loan funds or structures that your locality can do. We all know that localities up in Northern Virginia and Arlington, for example, they have a lot more money that they can kind of throw around in terms of investments. But I know Richmond is trying to figure out how to more effectively use their municipal loan to help fund this affordable housing. So it's tools that may be on the books, but maybe have not necessarily support. You know, CPACE and the program. It's also how trying to get the lenders on. So city can be a lending partner for support activity.
Three things, which somewhat already mentioned, but one is dollars. That's fundamental. Two is capacity. The organizations like ours who are trying to use these different sources have staffing needs that oftentimes these sources don't cover any of the overhead. So if there's ability of localities to help assist or to tag on funding that allows me to have one more staff person that gives us the bandwidth to consider a CPACE, you know, track on the funding source, that is enormously helpful. So funding, capacity, and the third is easy. Like, you know, it's all these sources, these 15 sources that we have on page one, they're all hard. They all have their own mandates and requirements. They all have their own, and some of them overlap, but many of them don't. And so it makes the regulatory, like the compliance side of it in the long run, just enormously difficult. So make it easy.
One more. I know Don has been extremely successful in the city of Richmond. You guys did a beautiful job of getting the right resources to create an application for these funds and the various funds. You guys really dug in deep, and it's just been incredible to see what you guys have been doing. Giving you a big shout out. Yeah. One more.
Yeah, just on the needs, overlaying requirements. The more that if you're creating something new or refreshing a program, the more that you can make those reporting requirements the same as existing programs, whether that's DHCD funding or tax credit funding or the big ones. The easier it is and the less strain on capacity. No one likes to spend a week 5 different report sets. You know? So that's what we need.
All right, there can be no more because we are out of time. So everyone give our panelists a big round of applause for their excellent. We're going to take about 3 minutes to reset the stage. So stand up and stretch, but please don't go anywhere. Awesome.